We're all owned by the Syndicate, body and soul. Or should I just say body?
Hello, filthy movie lovers, something weirdos, and anti-criterion bros, to the 6th episode of the Sin Syndicate, the only podcast that knows the dangers inherent in sexploitation sunbathing and the best way to please a Chinese military general. My name is Gentry Austin, writer and researcher, and I'm here with my co-host, adult film historian Casey Scott. And today we'll be looking at director Barry Mahon's 1967 arms-smuggling, girl-on-the-run nudie, Run, Swinger, Run, with a particular focus on its sexpot star, Gretchen Rudolph, a striking actress who had a short but marked career in adults-only films of the era. But more on that in a minute. First, let's check in with Casey for any updates or discoveries since we last talked.
Hi, Gentry. I just realized that I never say hi on these. I should probably introduce myself and say, hi, Gentry. Hi, listener. As promised, I made a visit to the LGBTQ Center here in New York to look at the Paul Eden papers after it was discovered that he died in 2007. And listeners know we covered Seeds a couple of weeks ago with Alex DeSanto, and I talked a little bit about him. He played the doctor in Seeds, who is very camp and over the top, and he made one other film with Milligan. So his journals and writings and papers are in the archives of the LGBT Center. The bad news first is that there's no detailed writing or any mention of Milligan in these papers. The very good and interesting thing is there's a very lengthy journal entry about a trip down south to South Carolina, or is it North Carolina? I think it's South Carolina, with Candy Hammond. Mm-hmm. And so he discusses driving with her, going to meet her very large family. The dates on it are off. The archive says that it's from 1969, but I posted all the snapshots of the letters and journals that I looked through to the Facebook group A Tribute to Andy Milligan. So if anyone wants to go to that Facebook group, you can look through all those images. They're handwritten, but you can kind of make out essentially the stuff he says. And some very kind soul, Mike McCollum, said that he read it, God bless him, and was like, it looks like he says that it's reminding him of people that he saw in Deliverance, which came out in 1972. So I believe the dates are wrong, and he went down with her in 1972, which would mean that he was still in touch with her after she stopped making films and wasn't even with Andy anymore. Which I think is really interesting, that he just randomly reconnected with her and drove down to the south to see her family in her home in 1972, which is really, I think it just goes to show, I guess, how enduring Candy, what Candy's presence in some people's lives were.
Yeah, she was a good time.
Yeah, it's a really interesting read. There were some other things I took, like there are some snapshots I took. He kept very detailed logs of the men that he slept with, which is really interesting, including business cards, phone numbers, all sorts of other stuff. I was like, wow, this is interesting. So I need to go back and just look into his adventures living in New York as a gay actor. But the Milligan content, slim, but the Candy content is gold, because he talks a lot about, just driving all over the place with her down south in her hometown. Rent-A-Girl news.
Yes.
So I posted, I'm very bad about promoting our podcast. You're way better than I am at that. But I posted on Facebook, and I tagged Anton Holden in it. And I had emailed him and I hadn't heard back. And he commented under it and revealed that he actually came up with the title Rent-A-Girl while it was in the editing stages in the editing room. And he said, boy, the stories I could tell you. And I immediately messaged him because I was nervous he wasn't with us anymore or something had happened. And I said, Anton, I emailed you, but I didn't hear back. And he said, oh yeah, someone hacked into my email like years ago and I haven't restored it. And I tried to get him on the phone really quick yesterday, but he said, I'm busy, but show me your email and I will email you from my new email address.
Nice.
So, TBD, but Anton, 89 years young, is still kicking, has a good memory, and he's keeping busy, which I love to hear. So hopefully more updates on Rent-A-Girl and Anton. And actually, if we have Anton, I would love to prioritize covering Aroused on an actual full episode. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's funny that he mentioned that he came up with the Rent-A-Girl title because, I mean, that kind of led to some issues with censorship, right?
Right. And it actually seems like it's, in hindsight, it seems like it's more of a humorous title than anything else. The other update is related to Rent-A-Girl. Was in preparing for this episode, I was watching a lot of Gretchen Rudolph, obviously, and I watched Moonlighting Wives. And I realized why Teresa Margano from Rent-A-Girl looks so familiar. So she's the lesbian Ginger in Rent-A-Girl. And she's kind of the catalyst for why they beat the shit out of, the sadist, the sadistic rich bitch at the end of the movie. She plays a completely different role as the innocent babysitter in Moonlighting Wives. And it's really jolting to see her in color after you've seen her in Rent-A-Girl in black and white. But I was like, oh my God. And I took screenshots to just compare for myself.
It's for sure her.
I don't know what name she used on that. Yeah, it's definitely her. I don't know what name she used on that movie because the pseudonyms are really all over the place on that. But that just makes me think, well, then she probably made a few more that I just either don't remember or haven't seen yet. Mm-hmm. So I'm really hoping that I discover more stuff of hers. And I'm glad that my feeling about her was like, well, she's actually really good in this. This is just a one-off. She's really good in Moonlighting Wives too. So yeah, she might have just been another actress moonlighting in these films. Conveniently enough, her screen name is Lorna, like the Russ Meyer, Lorna.
That name pops up a lot. You'll notice, in 60s and 70s exploitation films. So many Lornas.
Right. And she's super cute. She's introducing like her little nightgown, and she's supposed to be a teen, but she's not a teen, especially after you've seen her beat the shit out of somebody in Rent-A-Girl.
Yeah, she's the babysitter in that house with all those creepy paintings of little children with black eyes. Did you notice that when you rewatched Moonlighting Wives?
Yes, I did.
I don't know who set designed that.
I need to get those Blu-rays so I can hear the commentaries and see if there's any info on that. I'm sure there is, because that was, pretty well documented, I think, the history of that movie.
Yeah. So today we are going to be looking at the movie Run, Swinger, Run, which, as Casey said, stars Gretchen Rudolph. And so I thought we'd quickly look at the synopsis from the original Something Weird video. Do you remember what the other titles were on that feature, Casey?
Yes, it was Sex Club International, which I remember really disliking. And then there's a abbreviated version of The Adventures of Busty Brown, which ironically was probably shot at around the same time on the West Coast. That was shot in San Francisco, while this was shot in LA. So pretty good choice of putting that on there. Yeah,
Sex Club, it makes a good second feature because the guy who plays Mr. Schneider has a lead in that. So you get to see a double dose of Vincent Van Lin. Yep.
Right. From also Good Time with a Bad Girl.
Yep. So the synopsis from Something Weird is: one moment, a dirty old man is trying to maul her. The next, a sniper is trying to kill her. So it's run, swinger, run as luscious Laura flees her mama's boarding house to hook up with Aunt Mary in LA. But oh no, Aunt Mary's selling dope to high school kids and wants Laura to help. Instead, Laura checks into a hotel and meets the mysterious Schneider, who offers her $1,000 a week to be a hoe for his call girl racket. That's fine with Laura until, she discovers Schneider's dirty little secret and is quickly targeted to be one dead sex kitten. So, Run, Swinger, Run, Barry Mahon. Let's talk about the producers of this film. First of all, of course, it's a Barry Mahon production, distributed by Chancellor Films. Tell us a little bit about Chancellor Films. I know that they did a lot of Shelley Wilson films. Go on.
So, well, first things first, I am very lucky to have actually this issue number 11 of Cult Movies magazine, which is the last interview that Barry Mahon gave, conducted by Frank Henenlotter. So there's a lot of really good stuff in here. I'll be referring to that a lot.
Great.
And if you hear any papers, I'm going through pages of the magazine. So Chancellor Films, for a long time, I just always associated with Shelley Wilson. I thought it was Shelley Wilson's company. It is not, from what I found, it is not Shelley Wilson's company. She had Shelley Films, which was production and I think distribution, but they distributed her films for her. It was run by a guy that Mahon remembers as, he gives the last name Sugarman. And I can't find a Sugarman connected to Chancellor Films. But he also notes that eventually Sugarman retired, and Sandy Johnson, the director, who was also in CIP with Chuck Smith and Jerry Denby, took over for Chancellor Films and then continued with Chancellor Films into the 70s, I believe. A very interesting update, because Chuck said that he basically left movie making behind and left the movie business. But according to Mahon, he took over for Chancellor Films after Sugarman retired. But so Chancellor Films, they did a lot of imports, like everybody, but they released so much homegrown New York product. It's really kind of ridiculous. They imported a few things from California, but I think they were, for any California films they distributed, I think they were just the East Coast distributor for those. I don't think they were ever a national distributor. They were always a regional distributor, from what I found anyway. But a lot of their stuff is lost. I think probably their top. Well, I don't know. It's tough, the top one, because one of their later releases, which I'm dying to see, is A Weekend with Strangers, which is Alan and Arthur Savage, who did Submission, and that's a Jennifer Wells, Laura Cannon movie.
Couple Sarnos.
Prowl Girls from Mahon. Yeah, Come Ride the Wild Pink Horse and Bed of Violence. All the Sandy Johnsons, Infidelity American Style, Justine. The Chancellor list, there are more Chancellor films that are missing than Chancellor films that we have. And I think the question is, like, which lab did they use? And if it was Movie Lab, 50-50 shot, it's gone. The other 50 is that it still hasn't been transferred from all the Movie Lab stuff, that something weird saved. Yeah. But I feel like they targeted and got everything. But miracles have been known to happen. So
that Sandy Johnson Justine film is probably in my top 5 that I hope show up at some point.
Yeah.
I saw the
just
trailer
based on
for
the
that.
trailer, for sure.
Looks amazing. Yeah, like the big one is probably Confessions of a Psycho Cat. That's one of the big ones that came out of Chancellor.
That's right. That was them. Yeah. And that was that was funny, because that was like a pickup with inserts. I don't remember who distributed the original. I have to check American Film Institute on that. But they had a lot of good stuff, and that's another one we're lucky we have the negative for is Psycho Cat. And
they also did Byron Mabes, his post-Friedman film, The Bushwhacker, which is out on Blu-ray if you want to seek that one out.
Yeah, I think they were the regional distributor for that. So they handled it in New York.
So that's Chancellor Films. Anything else on them, or should we move on to Barry?
Chancellor Films is still I need to do more research on them. I'd like to definitively know how involved Shelley Wilson was with those. And there's a really good documentary that her daughter and son-in-law helped produce, which is called Queen of the Deuce, which came out recently, and that's on DVD for like $10 from the distributor, which I need to get. And they discussed Shelley Films, and I don't remember if they mentioned anything in relation to Chancellor, but just like their footprint in New York's exploitation is huge. So it's kind of surprising there isn't more documentation that I can find about them. Definitely worth researching more.
Barry was the kind of guy who I'm sure he got a good deal with Chancellor, or else he wouldn't have, connected with them. But Barry, if you don't know Barry's story, I think he's been covered pretty extensively. We know a lot about his background. There may or may not be some of his real life story in the Great Escape movie, which we've heard about. But yeah, Barry's story is, he fought in World War II. He went over there basically before the U.S. even had entered the war. And he was a pilot for the RAF. He shot down a bunch of German aircrafts, and then he eventually got shot down over France. He was in a POW camp. He escaped the POW camp. He was brought back to they caught him and brought him back. And then eventually when the war was over, he hooked up with Errol Flynn and was the personal pilot for Errol Flynn. And then they sort of began a business relationship as well, with Barry doing some directing and getting his feet wet in directing with Errol. And then after Errol died, Barry just kind of forged on, wouldn't you say? He just kind of tried to find a lane for himself in filmmaking, which for someone like Barry with not a whole lot of experience was low budget filmmaking in New York, in Florida and in New York. And so he eventually found a lucrative pocket of filmmaking where he could be successful, and that was in nudie films. And so, yeah, he likened filmmaking, especially his nudie films, to like cowboy pictures or Model T cars, where he would talk about the fixed formulas and cost to profit ratios. That was kind of how he looked at movies. He was not the most creative or innovative filmmaker, but I think there's still a lot of interesting stuff in his movies, especially if you watch enough of them. You pick up a lot of little ticks and little Mahon-isms that are very, I find them fun and amusing. And Run Swinger Run's an interesting one because I think it comes a little bit, it's at the tail end of the 60s where things are getting a little bit more violent. There's a little bit more sex. So, he was always following trends, and Run Swinger Run is definitely a trend following movie. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. I think that's very well put. He did not establish any trends.
Yes. He was always
following trends. And I feel like everything he did was kind of not by accident. I feel like if a Barry Mahon film is good, it's purely accidental. I don't think, because I think he would say to himself, he was making product.
Yes.
To fill a market. And he would invest a decent amount of money, a finite amount of money, but he would only do it knowing he'd get enough money back. And I think that's eventually why he stopped doing sexploitation pictures, because I think he thought there would be a better market in children's pictures. And there was investing apparently money into sex pictures, and sex pictures are moving closer and closer to hardcore. And Barry's films barely have any sex in them in them as they exist now. They're really just nudie cuties with very little sex in them.
Well, we'll talk about in this movie. There's a interesting rape scene.
There's actually sex in this.
Yeah, there is actually sex in this one. But that's a funny thing. Is like, what would have happened? I wonder, Barry, if he would have went into hardcore like Friedman kind of dabbled in it and was like, it's not for me. Barry didn't even try. He was just like, I know this is not my lane.
Well, and then he went down to Florida pretty early. It was like 69, I think. So, yeah. So by that time, people were making, like Bunny Yeager, who he'd worked with, was down there. She didn't do hardcore, but she did, like color, very hard soft features. And then there were people like Emilio Portici, and then of course like the mob people like Damiano came back down to Deep Throat. He stayed clear of all of that because he wasn't interested. He also got involved with the Pirates World Amusement Park, and so he was really involved with like booking acts there and doing all sorts of other stuff with that. So filmmaking, I think in this interview that I have, he's just kind of like, it was like it got my kids it paid for my paid for take care of my kids and all sorts of stuff, and it was a part of my life that lasted like a decade or more, a little more than a decade, and that was it. And I moved on to the next thing. And you can tell that there's no passion for filmmaking in any of his films, not one. So as much fun as some of them are, the man felt like he was making. It didn't feel like it's not like somebody like a Sarno, who he loves making films. He loves working with actors. He loves framing and lighting. I don't get anything of that from Mahon at all.
Yeah, the interesting thing about his movies usually comes from the performers, not from the way they're shot or the way they're made.
And he was very good in casting. Yeah, I think casting was kind of where he excelled, because even those little shorts that he did, which in this interview he describes as kind of like audition pieces. He was like, well, I want to see how they look on film. Yeah. And he would film them with sound and then just release them, whatever. And so typically, like Gretchen Rudolph, she started in 2 shorts of his, and then he knew that she photographed well. She could do dialogue. Yeah, those shorts are a trip, and he made so many of them. But he's very dismissive of them too. He's like, they were just basically audition pieces. I could shoot them quick. I had the film. They cost nothing to make. Yeah. And I was like, but they were in color. That's friggin' expensive in the 60s, and live sound. That's crazy. Yeah, that is something I'll give him credit for. Shooting live sound and color in this era. Virtually unheard of. So, you know, he knew where to spend the money. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and
movies.
honestly, some of those shorts I think are sometimes better than his features because I think he's a little bit more creative in them because he's not taking it as seriously and he's just playing with camera angles and filters and definitely seek out his shorts if you haven't seen any of his stuff before.
Yeah. I think Mahon works best in bite-size like that, especially for the nudie cuties. They're better in bite-sized morsels than these long. 60 minutes has never felt so long in some of these movies.
What's the matter with you?
Nothing.
You're acting so strangely.
I'm a strange girl.
This one is interesting, though, Run Swinger Run, is because he's working with a writer here. Do we know much about William K. Henniger, how they linked up?
I don't, but I mean, it's interesting because I also, around this time, he was also connecting with Kamal Harulu. And those...
A little bit later, wasn't it?
It was
a couple years
a year later.
Yeah.
But it's funny because the Harulu stuff is, Forbidden Flesh was 68, and then Some Like It Violent he produced. But Hennigar was, he did Thigh Spy and Surfside Sex. I remember I was researching the liner notes for Thigh Spy when Something Weird put that out on DVD-R, and I found that he died in 2005. And nobody reported it except like the Honolulu Gazette. It described him as a pilot and a photographer. So I'm guessing that might have been the connection with Mahon. Planes. Yeah, because Mahon loved his planes. You can tell in this movie, actually. I'm thinking of. I keep confusing this with Good Time with a Bad Girl, which has
has a lot of plane footage.
Nice shots on an airport.
But you can't hear anything because there's planes going overhead during that whole scene. It's just like he's like, "Oh, I love planes so much," but the audio is just like completely washed out because of it. It's so funny.
He not a technician.
Yeah.
You know what? He probably had a certain amount of time he had to shoot. He got it done. He left, and he was like, whatever.
Henniger also did Mr. Mari's Girls, which I should mention as well.
Which is great.
That's a good one.
I do enjoy that one a lot. Yes.
But I don't know much about him as what was he known for, really? I can't really pinpoint any particular, emphasis for Henniger.
No, and it's frustrating because there's really not a lot that I could find about him. He had a son and a daughter who I still need to reach out to see if they have any more info. Jeff Canoe kind of started with him, the guy who later did I think he did Revenge of the Nerds and other big stuff in the 80s. He kind of got into the business working on Thigh Spy and Surfside Sex, and then they did The Wicked Die Slow. And it's Natural Enemies. The Natural Enemies Blu-ray has an interview with Jeff Canoe where he comes out and says, I made these sex movies. Not always on IMDb. But he said that Henniger took the movie away from him and finished it without him. So that they didn't end well. I hate that movie, so I don't have the Blu-ray. But
a lot of people seem to hate that movie.
Interview on there. It's boring. It's just not good. It's not good. I prefer stuff like Thigh Spy and Surfside Sex, which are really interesting examples of sexploitation. Wicked Die Slow it feels like it's supposed to be a spoof, but then it's not. It just never works for me.
For Run Swinger Run, it does list Bill Henniger as the cameraman, so I'm assuming that's him.
Yes. Yeah. That was definitely him. But a lot of the crew on this later the assistant cameraman is Joe Mangini, who became a major photographer, but he also directed Smoke and Flesh the next year, which is a really amazing, underrated, underseen sexploitation movie which used a lot of the crew of this. So it's almost like Joe worked on this movie and was like, well, I like all you people. We're going to move over, including Bing John, the negative cutter. It also did Smoke and Flesh. Yeah, it's just interesting to note all these crew members. And I was like, all these people are connected to Smoke and Flesh, which is so much better.
I wonder what they thought really working on that. After a Mahon film, they're like, wow, is this what filmmaking can be?
Yeah, because Smoke and Flesh is just, it's like night and day. It's gorgeously shot. Yeah. There's enough story, but it's really more of a mood piece. Smoke and Flesh is just absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
This is not. Sorry.
Smoking, yeah, we could do a whole one on Smoking Flesh. Yeah, just the opening alone. It's like really this shot mounted to the motorcycle as it's cruising down New York streets.
It's really inventive and really creative. It feels like his audition piece as a cinematographer and a director. He's like, okay, this is my movie now. After I've been doing assistant camera work, I'm going to let it all hang out. It's really good.
Yeah, it reminds me of a scene in this movie, Run Swinger Run, where they're driving up, I assume is Highway 1 in California, but it's just like the most basic like shot of them driving. You can tell that someone is driving in the car next to them, just shooting out the window. It's just like the most basic shot.
Yeah,
nothing clever about it.
My name's Mike. What's yours?
Laura.
I'm going as far as Junction City. It's about 300 miles up the coast. How's that suit you?
Good. That's where I'm going.
That's a coincidence. Don't get me wrong, I like your company. Tell me something. You always travel in a bathing suit?
Bathing suit? Not always. Why?
I don't know. Just not many people do.
I thought you might want to play a fun game with me.
Okay.
So
I'm scared.
I didn't tell you about this beforehand. Yeah, no. Yeah, let's play a game. So the Mahon interview in the Cult Movies magazine is very funny because essentially it's Frank Henenlotter representing something weird saying, so we have a lot of your movies. Do you want us to send you copies? And they run down a list of titles and it's like, no. Oh, yeah, send me that one. No. So I thought you might want to guess which movies that he wanted copies of.
Well, which ones have planes in them, so... That's probably what I would assume are the ones he wants to see.
Well, I'll just keep it simple. Do you think he wanted a copy of Run Swinger Run?
No.
He did.
Okay.
Yeah. He was like, oh, yeah, we shot that in L.A. Yes, I want a copy of that. I actually have a list of the movies that he wanted. He wanted copies of Hagen Island, which is great.
Yeah.
The Beast That Killed Women, which is fun. Nudes on Tiger Reef, but only because his wife is in it, and we don't know who.
We still don't know. Yeah, we don't know where she is. She's in there somewhere.
A few of them. Yeah, Clell was in a few of these. Run Swinger Run, A Good Time with a Bad Girl, the planes, and he's like, we shot that in Vegas. I want it.
Yeah.
Cuban Rebel Girls for Errol Flynn.
For the Errol Flynn
and Violent Women. He said no to Nudes Inc., Nude Scrapbook, Crazy Wild and Crazy, Hot Skin and Cold Cash, which is crazy because that's one of his best movies. Prostitutes Protective Society, another one of his best movies. Sex Club International, Sex Killer, another one of his best movies, and Rocket Attack USA. He said no to all of those. He's like, no, I don't want to.
Interesting.
And apparently he said the Fanny Hill movies were the best, and those are impossible to get.
The ones that are lost, yeah.
Yeah, but at least that speaks well for Run Swinger Run. It was one that he wanted a copy of, and he had good memories of it. So I think that's good to know before we dive too much deeper into it. That Mahon approved of this movie. It maybe just a little more than just like product for him.
Mike, I was scared. I checked into the hotel and that morning called the FBI. They sent an agent over and said not to leave the motel. I decided to take a sunbath. Well, you know the rest of the story. They traced me some way and tried to kill me.
Now that's a fantastic story. You should write for the movies.
I don't know. No. I don't think it's shot in Las Vegas at all, is it? Some of the dark footage, I couldn't tell what these strips were.
No, I don't think so, unless he was just reusing shots from Good Time with the Bad Girl. Because I wish I knew what the shooting schedule for both of those was. They were both released in April 1967. Or weeks apart. So they were at the very least shot around the same time, edited and put together around the same time, then released a couple weeks apart.
Yeah. I can't understand the geography of Run Swinger Run because the guy who picks her up, Mike, he says he's from Oregon. So is he coming south and then she's coming north? I don't understand.
I think he's driving
because he says he's going to Junction City. He says he's going to Junction City, which I don't know.
Where's Junction City?
It's like in the middle of California. It's off Highway 1, way in the woods.
So he's driving north.
Okay, yeah, I think he is
because LA is Southern California. So he's probably going up there, and then he could be headed back to Portland.
Yeah.
What did he do? Was he like, I don't even remember if they gave him any kind of job. Was he a traveling salesman?
I don't know. I don't think they say. That makes the most sense.
That should give you listeners an idea that we have to just make stuff up for this script, because that's not important. What's important that he picks her up and he gets to have sex with her at the end of the movie.
Well, he doesn't. So let's get into the movie.
I don't
a little
love that
bit
either.
here.
We'll talk about that. I hate that ending.
I knew you wouldn't believe me,
You didn't really expect me to.
but I'm telling the truth, Mike.
Los Angeles is a town of make-believe. How else would a girl tell a story who was dressed in a raincoat and a pair of shoes, and that's all? Yeah, but don't worry, I enjoy your company. If you don't want to tell me the real story, I understand.
But it is the real story. Why won't anyone believe me? When I talked to the FBI, they acted the same way.
Yeah. So this guy,
What a
Mike,
dick.
picks up Gretchen Rudolph's character after she runs away. Okay, this is sort of elliptical. How do we start this? So it's told sort of in semi-flashback structure.
Right.
The opening you see is Gretchen Rudolph's character, Laura, sunbathing, and you see an assassin with a rifle taking a pot shot at her, missing.
Right.
She throws her trench coat on and nothing else, runs out and basically hops in this guy's car, who is Mike.
Which is very Kitten in a Cage, actually.
Yeah. And it's the alternate title. What was it? Nude on the Run.
Nude on the Run.
Yeah. There you go.
Which is wild. I did just want to note that opening sequence was shot at the Beverly Hills Hotel.
Okay.
And Mahon said that Madame Chiang Kai-shek was in the hotel with like security and everything. So
Oh my God.
they had Vincent Van Lin putting together a gun and shooting him with a gun on the roof and all this shit. And nobody blinked an eye that there was a guy with a gun on the roof while there was a high security guest at the hotel. And he mentions that scene. I think there are other rooms in this film. I feel like it must have been shot in a bunch of different rooms at Beverly Hills Hotel, or maybe in 2 rooms, or maybe 1 room, and he just switched the camera on to make it look like a different room. But they do look like hotel rooms throughout.
Yeah, that's a good example of the changing times. Yeah. Late 60s, you could be up on a roof with a pretend gun and nobody bats an eye, I guess.
In Los Angeles.
So she hops in Mike's car and they start heading north. She doesn't care where they go. She's just trying to get away. Mike doesn't believe any of her story that she starts to tell him, but I guess he listens anyway. And it jumps back in time to how this all started.
My father died when I was 16. He didn't leave very much to my mother and me except the house. Out of desperation, we took in a couple of boarders. One Saturday afternoon, my mother went to visit some friends, and she was staying for dinner. They knew she was out. She asked them if they wouldn't mind eating out for dinner. So they knew she was gone. I was lying on the bed listening to records when I got a funny feeling I was being watched.
Basically her running away from home, getting abused at her mom's boarding house, in a pretty striking scene with her and a older man who's a boarder. And tell us your impression of this scene, Casey.
I mean, first of all, I guess she's supposed to. I think she's supposed to be portrayed as being much younger, which makes me think, what is the time frame of this movie? Because if she ran away right after that, and then she went to, we'll get into it. She went to go visit a family member. That didn't go well. Then she met up with the Snyder guy. Is all this taking place in the matter of like 2 months or something?
I thought it was shorter than that.
Yeah, maybe less than a month. And I'm just like, wait, you were introduced in pigtails, and now.
Yeah.
Like, are you supposed to be a teenager? Are you supposed to be 19, quote unquote legal? I'm not sure. We once again have a sexual assault scene where she later discovers that she liked it. And there isn't really any reason to include that because that has nothing to do with the rest of her story. Except that I guess she likes sex now because she was raped. which is trigger warning.
Well, I think it relates to the rest of the story in that that's kind of the reason why she's initially okay going into this kind of sex worker position, because she's a little into it.
Which is so, when you put it like that, I like it even less.
Yeah.
It's just, listen, when we're talking about sexploitation, we're going to be dealing with a lot of problematic stuff. And that's just the nature of this beast. Luckily, that scene doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
And I believe she's clothed throughout. Yeah. It's kind of like the Bad Girls Go to Hell scene, sort of. Which is kind of over.
Yeah, it's all low-angle shots and just legs and flesh. But it's interesting because after that, when she's telling this story to Mike, she makes kind of an offhanded remark that she kind of scared this boarder away was because she acted so into it as he was raping her. And he got freaked out because he was expecting a fight. So this whole scenario, she didn't want to explain, or she didn't want her mom to find out that she enjoyed getting raped. So then she ran away. That's how I understood it.
Yeah.
You don't understand. As I told you, instead of being revolted by it, I liked it.
So it's complicated.
Do we blame Henniger? I think we're going to blame Henniger for this. No, because Mahon stuff, honestly, Mahon does have sexual assault in his stuff, but this is kind of this is a little sleazier than what he usually had in his movies.
I agree.
Like Prosecutors Protective Society, at least the woman gets her revenge.
So go on with the story.
Well, so I had a little money in the bank, and I went and bought a bus ticket to L.A.
Oh, yeah. So she goes to her aunt's house, and that turns out to be a sort of a drug peddling operation. But it's a pretty short scene, but we get Susan Evans, who's a somewhat familiar face, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Right. Yeah, because Mahon had already taken her out west to do Good Time with a Bad Girl. She basically worked exclusively for Mahon except for 2 films, I think. 2 or 3 films. She's fine.
She's just a blonde junkie. Passed out. That's how she's billed.
Yes. And at first I was like, did they shoot this back in New York? But then there are shots of her in the same shot with
Charlie, so Keith McDonald.
Keith McConnell. Yeah.
McConnell, yeah.
So she's in shots with him. So I was like, well then she's also in Busty Brown, which is in San Francisco. So she traveled a lot with Mahon.
Who's this Keith McConnell guy with the British accent? So to context, he's like the guy running this drug peddling operation with Laura's aunt. We don't know their connection, if they have a relationship, if he's, Uncle Charlie, or if he's just the leader of this operation. I don't know what his deal is.
I don't think he's related and then the aunt introduces her as like, this is my friend. I was like, that's your niece. That is not your friend. Yeah, I was like, okay, here we go. Yeah, Keith McConnell's an interesting guy. Keith McConnell was doing a lot of film and TV, an Irish actor, but with UK accent. I just recently saw him in Wilbur and the Baby Factory. It was a very large role. And then he's the title character in Lord Farthingate's Holiday, which is a lot of fun. He's kind of an Arthur Treacher lookalike, and he has that kind of vibe to him. His biggest, I think the thing most people would know him from is he played Sherlock Holmes in Murder by Death, which is the Neil Simon kind of spoof with all the major stars playing different detectives from literature and film. And he was in this and Busty Brown. For Mahon.
I wonder why.
He was in a lot of other stuff.
Why did Barry cast him in this part, I wonder?
Local talent, I think. I think Barry traveled light. I think he brought a few people out from New York, but then I think everyone else is local. Like, we can see that actually with Janice Kelly in this. She was definitely like a California blonde, gorgeous, from Brick Dollhouse and For Love or Money. So I think he went local on there. But he just brought people that he knew. I think it makes sense. If you're going to travel, you want to at least have some people that you know are reliable from back home. So the crew is New York, and a few of the cast are New York.
What the hell did you bring her in here for?
Just a minute, Charlie. Laura's a friend of mine, and she needs some help. And besides, maybe we can use her in the operation.
Yeah. So Laura kind of skips out on her aunt's drug operation. She goes to a bar, and that's where she meets Mr. Schneider. We will recognize as the guy from the beginning of the film that shoots at her. So She's recruited into this call girl operation, which pays well. Like we said, I think she has no qualms about this kind of work. So I guess drug smuggling, that's off the table, but sex work, she's kind of okay with, I guess.
Well, the drugs, well, they were saying they needed her to go to high schools, and so she's kind of like, want that race? You want me to go back to high school? Want that race and bells? I clearly look like I should have graduated already. So I think her qualms are like, I'm not going to give drugs to kids. So I think that's helpful in establishing that she has a moral center, even if she's sexually interested in getting paid to have sex, that she has a moral center, which comes back later.
Yeah, like you said, that comes back later. We'll get to that. So as she enters this operation, she sort of learns how it's run, which is basically they're basically imprisoned, right?
Right.
They're not allowed to leave this complex, wherever it is, which has an underground car lot. So it probably was shot at that hotel.
Probably. Yeah. I think it was probably all shot at the hotel, which is interesting.
And this is where, like you said, we see Janice Kelly. She has a pretty small role as a girl who's been around the block. She's waiting for her contract to end, right? She's like, I have 2 months left on my contract. So I guess these girls are signing long-term contracts or short-term contracts.
Yeah. Right, because they say, how much longer do you have in your contract? 2 months. I have this and then. So I guess they're kind of like indentured sex servants.
Yeah.
And I don't. Yeah, it's like, well, what are they going to do? And then if we see what they're going to do, they're going to beat the shit out of you or kill you if you try to break the contract. Because they have that one girl, the one girl with who's bloodied up. Not a good actress. I don't know who that is.
Yeah. Very strange scene. That
very strange scene. Yeah.
It's. So Mr. Schneider kind of like sneaks in at night when they're sleeping and does, I don't know, it doesn't show it. It just shows him sneaking into this room and I assume like shooting them in the head, shooting one of them in the chest because her arm is like covering the bloody wound on her breast. But I don't understand why he killed them. Because they wanted out of their contract early, or because they knew something, I think is the assumption.
Probably both. Because I think it's probably both. Because we get the implication that their clients are like high-end clients. Like there are a lot of diplomats, a lot of like people involved. Once again, we keep falling into these movies with syndicates, and
I know I was going to say that too.
This is like this crime syndicate with like Chinese spies and all this stuff, and I think that's the thing. It's like they're trying to keep these high-end clients happy, but I think they're also probably talking in bed, like they're letting secrets slip potentially, so they want to make sure that these girls aren't sharing any of that info.
Yeah,
I presume, because it's never said. I presume. Yeah.
How's this? Hey, that's lovely, but for tonight you're going to need something a little longer and more diaphanous.
Did you recognize the girl who plays June? She's kind of like the mother hen of the girls.
I did not, but I know I recognize the guy who played Giovanni, who is the partner, and I don't know who that is. It's driving me crazy because he is a professional actor. I've seen him in like films and TV. This is like the guy from Girl from SIN, who I'm like, I know I've seen this guy in like character parts, and it's going to drive me nuts who it is. But I did not recognize the girl who played June. The only other girl besides Sue Evans and Gretchen that I recognized was Janice Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she's hard to miss. I mean, she's great. She's very visually like stunning and everything.
Yeah, she's kind of like too pretty for sexploitation in a way, almost.
Yeah, I think you put it that she has movie star looks, which is absolutely true. Yes, it's absolutely true. Whoever ended up casting her probably was like, oh my God, we hit the jackpot with this.
Yeah, don't let her know.
Because, don't let her know that we're not paying her enough considering how gorgeous she is. Yeah. Yeah. She's good in Alice in Acidland too, actually.
Yeah,
she's
that's a good
in
one.
That with, what's her face, who I love, Sherry Jackson.
So cruising through the plot here, Laura it kind of all builds up towards this big dance that she's supposed to give to seduce this Chinese general who is pissed off because of, I don't know, something happened.
It's a lot of gobbledygook.
Yeah.
It's like he's not this. These are not Sarno scripts. I'll put it that way. It's just like it's a lot of talk, but it just kind of washes over me.
Yeah. It's leading up to this big dance. It's a good scene for Gretchen. I love how it starts because the scene starts with Gretchen kind of in the middle of the frame, and then the two girls are like right next to her as she starts to slowly do her striptease. He lets slip what's going on. Is that what happens? He lets slip that he's actually providing guns to the communists.
Some kind of note in his thing, and I'm just like, why would you even find this? Yeah, and then she reads it and she's like, yeah, it becomes a very patriotic duty of hers to stop this. I'm like, okay, here's that moral center again.
Who did they think that they were selling these guns to? I didn't...
Exactly. How would those guns not have been sold to the Viet Cong?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? But I think that's the thing. I think that they know that they're going to the Viet Cong because they're dastardly bastards, so they know that. But I think they probably are telling anybody else that asks, oh yeah, these are going to the U.S. forces. Why the hell would that ever be the case?
Yeah.
That makes no sense historically.
This play for pay may be all right for a job, but I want a real friend. How about it, Bob?
All right, honey. You've got a friend.
Yeah, so Laura figures this out, and she tells the nice guy, Bob. Yeah, Bob the chauffeur.
Bob is, yes. Yeah, Bob, there's Bob and Mike. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So she tells nice guy Bob the chauffeur, who she's kind of befriended, about he's as shocked as she is, and he helps her escape, dumps her at this hotel, drops her off at the hotel.
Where did she go? Where did he go? I thought that it's very weird.
Yeah,
and then it seems like he's a good actor and good looking. So I'm like, did he abandon production? Did they have to write around that? It was very strange.
Yeah, we don't see him like returning back to the organization and having to answer any questions or anything.
Right. Yeah. Which is very unusual. Yeah, because when I saw him and they had these little dialogue scenes, I was like, oh, okay, we have a romantic male lead now. But no.
Yeah, that's what you think. It kind of leads you to believe, like, you've seen enough of these kind of movies, like, okay, this nice guy that is listening to her and believes her, this is going to be the guy she ends up with. This is her savior. But no, she's like dumped at this.
Her, yes.
Yeah, and he believes her right away. As opposed to this guy, who she's like telling this whole story to, Mike, as she's driving up the coast.
Car ride.
Yeah. Well, he said it was like 600 miles.
Right. And he's like, well, I guess the radio's broken. Just tell me whatever you want. Jeez.
So it loops back to the beginning, where you see her, somehow Mr. Schneider tracks her down and takes this pot shot at her. And so it
somehow is right. How the hell did he find her?
I guess we could fill in the blank that maybe Bob did go back and maybe he tortured the information out of Bob or something.
But how did he know where she was in the second hotel? The first hotel, I can kind of get it. The second hotel with Mike, what? How? Yeah. I don't know. Unless they had a tracker on her, but that's not been established.
Well, it's sort of alluded to that he's like some German like elite commando or something, right?
So that actually would track with Mahon and Hennigar, because I think they both fought in World War II. So it's kind of like the Russ Meyer holding grudges decades later of people after fighting in the World War II. Yeah.
Yeah. So the big conclusion, spoiler alert, is that just as Mr. Schneider's going to take this second shot at her, he's taken out by FBI agents who are on a roof above them or something. It's hard to place them, but the FBI saves the day.
Him too. Yeah.
So the FBI maybe has been believing her story, but told her maybe.
Oh wait, no, I think Bob told the FBI. Did he not? Did she call the FBI? This is not good.
That we don't know this
light. We shouldn't be this confused.
Yeah. Right. I assume
this is kind of why I don't I remember liking this much more and revisiting it. I'm like, God, this is so much story for something so immensely stupid. It doesn't need to have this much story.
Yeah. But
it's really too much.
The reason we're watching it is because of Gretchen Rudolph.
Right.
So,
but then I got mad because I was watching all these other Gretchen movies. I was like, damn, I wish we were talking about this.
I know. I did the same thing. I did the same thing where, I revisited Naked Fog.
Which I still haven't seen, yeah.
You haven't seen Naked Fog?
No, because it's impossible to find anywhere to download, and I haven't bought the Blu-ray yet.
Okay.
I wanted to test drive it before I bought the Blu-ray, but I need to buy the Blu-ray anyway, so I might as well just buy it. I watched Love Rebellion, which I really quite liked.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have found a movie that Casey has not seen.
Oh, I have a lot. I have a lot of Barry Mahon. I haven't seen Sin in the City or The One Warm Bed. Like I have a lot of movies that I own, but I haven't watched yet.
Oh, how, my dear? I see you've been shopping, buying pretty things.
Yes. I bought a beautiful black negligee with underwear to match. I think you're going to like it.
Well, let's talk about Gretchen because, as I alluded to, or as we've both alluded to, this is not Barry's finest work. I like it well enough, but the reason why I wanted to return to it particularly is because it's a rare starring role for Gretchen, who didn't get a whole lot of starring roles. Joe Sarno cast her a couple times as a star or kind of a co-star, but this is one of her rare non-Joe Sarno movies where she is definitely the star.
I don't know. I feel like she did 6 films for Sarno. 2 of them were lost.
Yeah, so we can't see those.
Left, she is the star.
Yeah.
Love Rebellion, she's the star. My Body Hungers, she's the star.
Yeah. So
Moonlighting Wives, she's the second female
co-star. Yeah.
Yeah. She's like second billed under Tammy Latour. And then the other 2, I don't know. I was trying to read. I read their summaries in the American Film Institute catalog, and it doesn't say who plays who. So I don't know if she was the lead in those. But Sarno obviously saw something in her and kept wanting to work with her. Mm-hmm. And when you see her films, it's very clear why he would want to work with her. She's very good. She's a very good actress, gorgeous, and that kind of fits everything that he needs for these particular type of films he's making. Yeah. You need to be able to act. You need to be gorgeous.
Yeah, she's not a theatrically trained actress. You can tell that much. Yeah. But I think Joe probably saw that this is something he could work with. Like she's not, up to the level of a Tammy Latour or some of his other or Patty McNair. Yeah,
she's kind of peerless. Yeah.
But Gretchen, I think she had enough. She was malleable, and of course, she looked amazing and had no qualms taking her clothes off. So tell us a little bit about, what we've learned about Gretchen's background.
So it's interesting because her story is very similar to the stories that you see in these films, which is a girl from Kansas City, Missouri, comes to the East Coast, New York. Well, actually, I believe that she started out in Atlantic City as like a showgirl in the early 60s. But yeah, obviously trying to enter show business. But it doesn't end terribly yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, she finds her way into modeling. And that's how she connects with Barry Mahon, because Barry Mahon puts out his ads in the papers, typically looking for models who will disrobe and who look good on camera, and he pays well. And then through that, I think, I don't know if Barry suggested her to Joe. I don't know if they connected like that. I don't know if those are 2 very different worlds. But somehow Sarno found her. Either through maybe an ad in like Backstage or any of those other pieces, because I think she definitely wanted to be an actress with or without training. And I think Naked Fog was her first, I believe, because Naked Fog was shot before Moonlighting Wives, and then Moonlighting Wives is her second, and it was just like one after the other for a while there, for like a year, I think a year and a half. And when she wasn't doing work for Sarno, she was working with Mahon. And it's funny, those are the only 2 directors that she worked with in New York. She did 4 features for Mahon and 2 shorts and 6 features for Sarno. And I think it's interesting to note that, because then it kind of gives the impression, oh, these are two people that she trusted and that she knew that she could come back to work with. She wouldn't feel exploited. She wouldn't feel uncomfortable. She knew that she could get paid well. She could work, doing acting, while also being paid for, looking beautiful. And her New York films are very different from her California films. And there's a big gap between those. Yeah, the New York films, I was just watching My Body Hungers literally before we started recording. I was like, God, I love this movie. I love it way more than I remembered, actually. I think I rated it I think I gave it an 8, and I probably would give it a 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. On Letterboxd, 4 stars right now. I think I'm going to give it 4.5. I think it's really, really strong.
Yeah, it's a nice little thriller set in a kind of a towny bar, right?
Yeah, it's a little small town with a sleazy bar with the dancers called the Oomfettes. Yep. And a really good cast. I mean, and that's the thing. A lot of these women that he worked with a lot at the same time, Belladonna, Tammy Latour, Pat McNair, it's really, she was in very good company. And something I always really loved about her was that she had that beauty mark.
Yep. And
she didn't have to draw it on. She just naturally had this gorgeous beauty mark that Marilyn Monroe would have killed for. So, it is just, she's just an absolutely stunning creature. Absolutely beautiful. And it helps that she's a good actress. I think it would be tough. It'd be kind of difficult if she looked this good but had struggled with dialogue. But the fact that she is so good, and you can, like you said, you can tell that she's not classically trained. But I think that's actually a good thing, because I think it feels much more natural. It's kind of reminds me of a Candy Hammond, or somebody who is just able to work with dialogue and she's able to work with the director and what the director wants.
Yeah, you have to see Naked Fog, because there's a scene where she is kind of beat up by a John, and she's kind of cowering in the corner. Mm-hmm. And Tammy's character comes and kind of consoles her, and she snaps back at her. And it's kind of it's a very primal sort of scream that her voice kind of changes.
Don't touch me! I've got to get dressed. There's money to be made out there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She has a certain rawness, I think, to her that I think Joe definitely liked. But like you said with Barry, in this film, I think he probably should have given her a couple extra takes in a couple instances.
Yeah,
but he didn't.
I definitely agree.
So she comes off a little bit more amateurish here than she does in Sarno's.
Which is wild, because I think this was shot after most of her Sarnos, I believe. It must have been shot late 66 to come out in April 67. And so it had been shot after Moonlighting Wives and Naked Fog and all that stuff. So I think it definitely, if you can contrast those two, contrast My Body Hungers and Moonlighting Wives with Run Swinger Run, you can see an actress working with a director who is trying to not only get his story told in the best way possible, but actually works. I do believe Sarno worked with his actors to make sure that they were doing their best. I think he cared about his actors, which is so rare in this genre. Yeah. I think he cared about his actors. And he would work with them to make sure that they were doing good work and they looked good and they came across as good. Because I think he knew he was working with a lot of actors that wanted to be actors. So, they wanted to work at their craft. Mahon didn't give a shit. I think Mahon usually worked with models. He got really lucky with Gretchen because she could act and she could work with a script. But I think you're right. There are some moments where I'm just Mahon didn't have enough film for a second take. So he was just just do whatever you need to do, Gretchen, and we'll move on. Sarno, but that's another thing. Sarno didn't have money for a second take either, but I think he would have done it. I also think Sarno feels like the kind of director that would have probably done.
He probably would have ran
some
through
kind
the
of
scene.
Rehearsal.
Yeah.
Yes. Mahon would never have done that. Yeah. Sarno would have at least done the run through, I think.
Yeah. Barry seems like the kind of guy who's hands her a sheet of paper, say this. And
well, that's actually, it's funny. In this interview, he says, I usually wrote my scripts in an hour. For most of his movies. That's why that's the thing. It's I just need a script. And I'll do it in an hour. And then some of the movies, I think he said, were kind of just improv, which you can definitely tell.
I was very nervous about the evening. Not so much about having to go to bed with a Chinaman, but the whole operation in general. I knew I was a prisoner, and from the looks of it, Bob was my only hope, and I wasn't so sure I could depend on him.
Let's talk about Gretchen. So like you said, there's a big gap that happens around 68.
Yeah.
She does another, so Forbidden Flesh with Barry Mahon. Let's just clarify. I watched that recently. Gretchen is in it. She is credited. I don't know if she's credited. She is in it.
She's uncredited.
Yeah, but it's a very small part at the very end. It's old footage from New to Go-Go. I can tell because her hair is that bright red. It's the exact same color hair. So I don't know. So you could almost say that gap started a little earlier because this is not new footage. So maybe after
this.
Yeah.
Maybe after Run Springer Run.
Yeah, so there's this big gap, and then it looks like she goes to L.A.
Yeah, that journey is difficult to track. That's a situation where I know Michael Bowen interviewed her. God love Michael, of course he did. I'd love to know what they discussed outside of Sarno, if they did.
Here's what Bowen, he has a small blurb in the Mood Landing Wives commentary. All he says is that he talked to her. He says that she was an interesting person who had some mental health problems. That's all he said. So I really want to, when that book comes out, I'd really love to hear more from her to see what happened in that big gap. I think we kind of know what happens after that gap was she went back to Kansas and she got married.
She went home.
Settled down.
Went home and got married. Yeah. She left behind, I believe, she left behind a son. I know that. She passed away in 2021. Causes were never revealed in the obituary. So I'm not sure. But yeah, the California films, very different.
Well, real quick. Yeah. So the cause is not known, but in her obituary, the photo memorial, you can see her in the hospital with tubes up her nose. Right. So just to clarify, she was in hospital. It seems like it was a natural death or something like that. I just don't want anybody to assume that it was suicide or something like that.
No, yes. Actually, thank you for saying that. Yes, because that's very true. Yeah. Good clarification. I really appreciate that.
Wouldn't you like to kiss me? Wouldn't you like to feel the warmth of a woman's body?
So the California films. So in New York, she doesn't do any comedies. Really?
Yes.
All of her films in California are comedies, whether you find them funny or not. They're comedies. So there's a movie called The Playmates, which I think is her first one she did out there.
In 3D.
And in that one, what's that? Yes, in 3D. And she stars in it with Con Covert, who was a well-known gay actor who appeared in these films in various different roles. He was like the cross-dressing killer in Scream in the Streets. I think it's probably most people know him for. The opening of the movie
is her.
Is her. Just in 3D coming towards the camera, but it's much more graphic than anything she did in New York already, and it's literally 10 years after she first stepped in front of the cameras in New York. And she has that little scene, and then there's a little comic bit later where with Con Covert again, where he's trying to get into a phone booth to change into a superhero, and they have this comedy back and forth, which is really cute. And then that's it. But she returns in another movie. She returns in this movie called Phantasm with Con Covert. And their sequence is it's maybe the most shocking one in the movie, actually, where she plays this housewife that sees Con Covert stealing her underwear off of a clothesline and drags him in by his ear while he's in her bras, panties, and garter, and proceeds to bend him over the kitchen table, whip him with a cat o' nine tails, and then strap on a dildo and plug him.
Yeah.
And then she wakes up. It was just a fantasy. I love that it's the two of them together again. And it really makes me wonder about their relationship. Unfortunately, Khan passed away a while ago, too. Phantasm, the casting for that was mostly Bill Margol, but I think he handled the people who were doing hardcore. And so it would not have been her and Khan. They worked with, I think, 2 other casting agencies at that time. So she had an agent in California. We know that. I just don't know who yet. I'm trying to figure that out. Her biggest role was in The Dictator, which for some reason the IMDb says is 74. The copyright on the opening credits is 77. She plays Maria Persona, a Eva Perón type female president of a unnamed Latin American country. She's a very funny, very thick fake accent. She has a real highlight of the movie where she takes she rips her chest, rips her top off to expose her breasts and said, "See these breasts, senor? These are meant to nurse babies. One on the left, one on the right. Why are you depriving me of my right? Please do something, anything." Because it's a global male sterilization epidemic. Yeah, and she needs babies to nurse her breasts. So very memorable, included in the trailer. Yeah. And then from those highs, unfortunately, the Capitol Hill Girls is maybe the most unflattering exit from the industry I can imagine for anybody. It's another 3D movie. I tried to make it through this today, and I have to go back to finish it. It's really god-awful, and she's photographed very unflatteringly. And
what year is this?
That's 77 as well. Okay. And that was, I think, the last thing she did. Because I think Dictator was shot in 76, same year as Phantasm. And then 77 is Capitol Hill Girls. Yeah.
If you've seen her in the Sarno stuff, and even in the couple Barry Mahons, and then you see these movies, she's definitely older. I think she's more in that 30s. She's more in that. I mean, they're probably casting her as like MILFs at this point, right? It sort of is. She sort of is in Phantasm. Yeah. Yes,
and then I think she is in Dictator too. I think that role is. She's like she's an older woman running a country. Yeah. And she's more Zoftig. I'll put it that way. I think she's more full figured because she's older. She's in her 30s. She can't. But she's not going to look like she looked in Moonlight.
She still looks great though. Yeah.
Yeah, she's gorgeous. Like they wouldn't be casting her to take her clothes off if she didn't look good. Right. She still looks great. But it's just interesting to see her in these comedy roles, which is she never was asked to do anything like that on the East Coast.
She's good. Yeah, she has good comedic timing. You can tell.
Yeah. So then she, according to her obit, she returned to Kansas in 1978, and after doing something like Capitol Hill Girls, I don't blame her. I think.
Tell me more about that. I haven't seen that.
It's terrible. I mean, it's a very badly photographed. It's another one of these 3D movies that are using the technology that Stephen Gibson did for the Playmates, where it's all done in camera. Yeah. So it's photographed, but it's worse. It's made by the same people that did like International Stewardesses, I believe, which is around the same time. It's just bad. It's just terrible.
Is it a sex comedy as well?
Yeah, it's a sex comedy. The only thing that's worth noting, and I have to talk to her about it later tonight, is it's the first role I can find for future adult film star Kelly Nichols. She did it. It's a softcore movie. She did it when she was modeling, and I texted her snapshots of it, and she said, "Oh yeah, I did like underwater photography with this giant 3D camera on that. I totally forgot I did that movie." The only thing worth noting about that movie, I can't help wondering if she went out to California hoping that she would find somebody to work with who would make her feel comfortable and valued and give her something noteworthy, like a Sarno and even a Mahon, where like she worked with him enough that she obviously felt comfortable enough with him, and he flew her to Los Angeles to make a movie. I mean, it's not exactly globetrotting, but to be working in New York with Sarno and then hopping on a plane to go to Hollywood to make a movie with director, I mean, that would obviously give you the impression, I'm working with like good people. And I think she was. And then California, she's lucky that she was able to get those roles in softcore films because everybody else was doing hardcore at that time. I think if she'd went out earlier, like Helena Clayton finished her Sarno stuff and then flew out, and so did Maria Leese. Both of those two examples, they both flew out and they were able to do films with like Gary Graver and and Dave Friedman and people like that. And she didn't do that. She waited until the 70s when the industry was really changing. And at that time, I think it was tougher to find roles that weren't hardcore.
Yeah.
And I'm not even saying that she was also exclusively just looking for sex films. I'm sure that like what she was in New York, I'm sure she was looking for bigger stuff. And it's kind of a good example of how the industry has so many talented people in it that aren't necessarily going to break out into something bigger. And that is kind of sad when you're watching these films and you see people that are really talented and they should have gone on to bigger and better things. Mm-hmm. But at least we have these to kind of see what they had to offer. Yeah. And she had a lot to offer, for sure.
Well, it does sound like, that last film experience might have pushed her back to Kansas in a way.
Right. And honestly, like, that might have been the best move. I mean, it sounds like it was the right move, but then she was able to get married and start a family. I mean, and be happy, hopefully. I mean, I think that's what any of us want for these women that we love in these films. We want a happy ending, whether it's them staying in the industry and being successful or finding happiness in other areas in life.
Right. And
I just hope that she found that. It sounds like she did, and I just wish she was still here with us. She only just passed away 4 years ago.
Right. I'd point everybody to go. We'll link to it in the show notes, but her obituary page, and to watch the memorial video, which has a lot of photos of her with her family. Yeah. And it just kind of reminds you that the actors in these films, for a lot of them, this was not their entire life. You know, they had a whole nother life after this. And, seeing her with her grandkids and bowling and smiling as an elderly lady, it's like, it just kind of hits home. Like, for us as fans, we only see them in this short period of time.
Right. That video is also great because it includes pictures from virtually every part of her life.
Yeah.
It goes back to her modeling photos from the 60s where they have the black and white. The photo of her obituary is a modeling photo from around the Sarno era. And because she's stunning. Like, that is kind of the image of someone when they pass away. That's who you want to remember is them captured at their most beautiful. But and also you see stuff from her in the 70s, probably after she got back from California. I'm hoping she didn't return with like her tail between her legs, like she was a failure. It sounds like even if she felt that way, she found something fulfilling in having a husband and a family and friends and building a life for herself back in Kansas. I mean, I think that's all we could hope for. She could have ended much more tragically.
Oh yeah,
which a lot of people did.
Good point. Yeah. Did you try to look up anything about her husband, Donald C. Lindaberry?
No, I wanted to. I'm also tempted. I would like to reach out to the kids if possible, but something that I'm always hesitant about with kids, and I think this is actually a good pro tip for anybody that's trying to reach out to family members in general, is that you don't know what they know. Like for example, if I want to reach out and say, "Oh my God, your mom was amazing in My Body Hungers," because she is. I think that's my favorite of her performances that I've seen. I still need to see Naked Fog, but for all I know, she could have said that. Well, that movie, I had a traumatic experience on the set, and so that was a really hard memory for me. Yeah. Also, you don't know if she even told them about Gretchen Rudolph. That's another thing. I know there are a few people that have reached out to like children or people and been like, "Oh my God, I love your parent, I love your kid, or I love your." I mean, I did that with Sam Stewart's son, and he was very, very cordial and nice about it. But for some people, you just don't know what at that part of their life was ever brought up.
Something I noticed is that she used a lot of different pseudonyms, more than I feel like a lot of her peers did. So it makes me think that maybe she was a little bit more secretive about this part of her life. Just looking at Moonlighting Wives and Naked Fog, she's Jan Nash.
Right.
She's Ginger Stevens in The Love Rebellion. She's Elizabeth Bing in this movie, Run, Swinger, Run. Mm-hmm. And she's the closest to her real name, Gretchen Gale, in Phantasm. So it's like these names are not even similar. It's not like she's reusing a first name or a last name.
Yeah, the only movie that she was Gretchen Rudolph on was My Body Hungers. Everything else was either Ginger. The three Sarnos come Pink Horse, Bed of Violence, and Love Rebellion are all Ginger Stevens, I believe. And then Jan Nash for the other two. So she only was Ginger. Actually, it's funny. My Body Hungers, almost all the names in the cast are either real names or the closest to the real names that I've seen.
That is,
which is interesting because it's kind of like, okay, was this supposed to be a more mainstream breakthrough movie?
Yeah.
I would think Moonlighting Wives would have been that. It was in color, and there's really not a lot of sex in it. It's mostly clothes stuff. But that's very true. And Gretchen Gale, yeah, that is close to her real name. But she never ever used Rita.
Yeah.
Which is her real first name on anything. It was always her middle name.
I took you off the street and gave you everything. I require very little of you, except to fulfill your agreement. What seems to be the trouble?
You can't make people stay here like slaves. My boyfriend finally got in touch with me through some friends. In spite of everything, he wants to marry me. I won't stay here anymore.
I'm afraid you've made a bargain, my dear. You have exactly 6 months more to work. At that time, you are free to go.
I want to go now. In 6 months, I may never have another opportunity. I want to get married and have kids like other women. Can't you understand that?
Yeah, so that's a good point that you made. Yeah, like this part of their life may not have been the part of their life that they cared to share with their children, or maybe one that they didn't look back at fondly. We don't know. So
right. And also, I know I've mentioned before, a lot of these movies were not available to watch ever until something weird started getting a hold of them and releasing them. Like, only the Gretchen Gales were really available on video. So naturally, she probably wouldn't want to talk about some of those.
Yeah.
But the Sarnos, those were impossible to see until, much, much later. Whoa. I would like to know if she looked back at least on the Sarnos with some fondness, because she's just so good in them.
Yeah, we'll have to wait for Bowen's book because, hopefully he asked her those questions. But yeah, like even Naked Fog, that was just discovered, I think, 2007? Yeah. Maybe even later than that.
I mean, I think it was later. It might have been like 2017, maybe.
Yeah.
I think it was right before COVID.
I think there was a 7 in it.
Yeah, I think, you're right, because I remember a 7 being in it. I think it was 2017, and yeah, that was a big deal, because every time a Sarno movie pops up, it's a big deal. Love Rebellion is only available in German, and she's still good in it, even dubbed in German, Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad you chose this movie so that I could remind myself of how good she is, because she is kind of like, when I think of my New York women, I think of like Linda Boyce and Uta Erickson and Pat McNair, another Sarno person, and Peggy Steffens, obviously. I never automatically go to Gretchen, and now I'm just like, wow, I've really been doing her a disservice, because I've loved her in everything, so including the 70s stuff. So yeah, I feel like I'm glad that you redirected my gaze back onto her work.
Peek behind the curtain is these episodes are just excuses for us to revisit our favorites.
Yes, basically, we'll pick one example of an actress so that we can gush about them. Right.
I'd say Sarno was one of my early entryways into sexploitation, so she was pretty familiar to me for a long time. But as I've journeyed on, I don't see her as much and other stuff, because you really only see her in the Sarno stuff and these a couple Barry Mahons. Right. So it was really nice to go back and revisit, and just, if nothing else, she always has perfect makeup, perfect eyeliner.
Stunning. Absolutely stunning. And that's even in the 70s, the cheekbones.
Yeah.
Just the flawless bone structure. And then in the 70s, 10 years later, still flawless bone structure. Yeah. I mean, just you said movie star looks about Janice Kelly. Gretchen Rudolph, movie star looks.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning.
A movie
cannot overstate.
Movie star face and sexploitation body. Maybe that's the way to put it.
And then she's not as good as Jennifer Lawrence, but she's definitely a talent.
Jennifer Wells or Jennifer Lawrence?
No, I was thinking of Jennifer Lawrence. I'm trying to compare her to another another actress, but I don't know. She's very distinctive.
Yes,
I can't really think of a comparison for her. It's not like Pat McNair. Well, and that's the interesting thing. In the scene, I keep referencing My Body Hungers because it's so fresh. Because I literally watch it as a palate cleanser after Run Swinger Run. I was like, let's watch another Gretchen movie. And watching her in scenes with Pat McNair, you mentioned that no stage training. Pat McNair clearly theatrical, professionally trained actress. Gretchen not, but it's so interesting to watch them together, and it somehow feels natural, the two of them together.
Yeah, and I'm sure Gretchen learned a lot, like working with these girls. Like, basically that was her training. And also
actresses too. I mean, what's his face? Aristides, another actor.
Yeah.
Joe Santos. I mean, yeah, she got to work with a lot of like actual actors. So yeah. Because Sarno loved working with them. And it just made me think, God, I really need to just do like a Sarno marathon and avoid the comedies, because his comedies, except for Touch of Genie, is the only good comedy. All the other comedies are just god-awful.
They're very Borscht Belt.
His sense of humor just doesn't work for me. Yeah. like Pandora and the Magic Box. And what's the other one? There's some more. Deep Throat 2 is unwatchable.
That's bad, yeah.
Well, actually, you know who loves Deep Throat 2, unironically? Michael Bowen.
Okay.
He's the one-man fan club for Deep Throat 2. And I'm just like, you're going to have to explain this to me in like a dissertation at some point, because this is unwatchable.
Yeah, and A Touch of Genie, I think, is watchable.
Love Touch of Genie.
Yeah,
Touch of Genie's fun, and he's having fun with like Tina Russell. And he directed her in Sleepyhead, which is one of her only actually good performances, because she was not an actress either. Yeah, I think I'm thinking I need to do a marathon today now. some Sarnos. I need a palate cleanser from the Mahon, because yeah.
I must say, for a small town girl, you've learned quite a bit.
So in memoriam, Gretchen Rudolph, it was, like you said, it was a joy to revisit her filmography. And for me, it was interesting to watch for the first time that 70s stuff, which I hadn't seen before.
I did also, just going back to the Mahon of it all, I was doing my research about, like, 'cause I saw in the credits that it credits the lab for the movie, which
lab?
Is no, surprisingly not. Movie Lab is New York. They had a few locations, but they had one in New York. But the lab for this was Arta Laboratory, and it was located on 723 7th Avenue. And then I found an article in 1969 where the lab was trying to sell off the picture negatives and soundtracks to a long list of Mahon films, because he owed them a massive debt of storing those things. I have the list of the titles they were trying to get rid of. They had the negatives too: Censored, Prostitutes Protective Society, Good Time with a Bad Girl, Sin in the City, Hot Skin and Cold Cash, Nude on the Run, aka Run Swinger Run, Girl Smugglers, Sex Killer, Sex Club International, The Warm Warm Bed, Adventures of Busty Brown, I Was a Man, and then two that I'm not familiar with called Smut Shop and Party Wives. And I have not been able to determine if he ever bought those back. By that time, he'd moved down to Florida. So they basically went public and said, we're going to sell this shit off to pay off, to get the money that Mahon owes us. We're going to sell these elements.
Yeah.
Didn't mean they were going to sell the rights to them. They were just trying to sell the elements. Other labs have done this. Gafanti Labs did this. There were some other labs, and it's just like, it doesn't really make any sense. But
all those films exist. Like, we can watch. All those films are available. Yeah,
pretty much all of them.
You listed,
except for Girl Smugglers.
Yeah, those last two, I'm not sure about either.
And Party Wives, and the last two, I don't know what those were. There could have been two he produced, possibly, and maybe one of them is Forbidden Flesh under a different title. Possibly. I think they eventually moved over to Movie Lab, because this lab closed in 1993. And I don't remember when Movie Lab closed and when Mike and company did that massive, like, undercover operation to save everything from Movie Lab. That was like there was like a secret agent movie with them getting that shit out of there. Thank God. But I don't know what happened in between 1969 and 1993 when the lab closed. I don't think that the negatives exist for all of those. I think some of those are only prints. So then that begs the question, or some of the negatives sold and the others weren't? Because he was down in Florida, and I think he was moving into the children's productions. Like 69 is Wonderful Land of Oz. And he's quoted in this article I found as being like, well, they were asking for a certain amount of money, and he said, well, two of those are worth much more than that, so I'll probably buy those back. No, I think he said he was going to countersue them. I was like, just pay your rent, Harry. just pay your back rent and get the shit out of there. Yeah, it was just like, yeah. Well, he knew that Mike, because he worked with Mike, and in this article, in this interview, he says he'd given Mike and Lisa and the company complete permission to do anything they want with his films because he owned them. So he owned them completely. So, for example, like Harry Novak tried to say he had Crazy Wild and Crazy and Nudes Inc. And Barry Mahon was like, no, those rights were for regional distribution only. Those rights expired. Those rights came back to me. I own these movies. So Mike was trying to get back the Fanny Hill films from this guy down in Florida who said he owned them. This guy tried to pull this for years and years before he passed away. And Barry's saying, no, fuck that guy. Look, he literally says that in this interview. His language is very clear. No, I own these movies. I'm telling you that I have the rights to them, so he needs to give you those materials because I own them. And then he died, and that was kind of it. It kind of ended. The Fanny Hill stuff was still being held hostage by that guy. Yeah, Barry maintained ownership of all of that stuff. There weren't a lot of copyrights on the films that he put out, but he still owned them. I think he had enough chain of title and proof. And then Chancellor went defunct, so I'm sure he just kept them all. But I don't think he ever thought there was that much value in them, especially because so many of them he didn't care about because he considered them products, and he'd really moved on with his life. So I don't think he would have considered it a worthwhile venture to put down money to pay for these things for Mike to have access to them. I think it would have been more fun to maybe do another movie lab raid, under the counter, so to speak, which I know they did with the help of Distripix. I think it was a 50-50 split because a lot of the Distripix stuff was in there.
Well, the fans of Barry, and there are fans, have been clamoring for a Barry box set for a little while now. We'll see what happens.
Really? Where?
In my mind. In my own mind.
Which films? Most the nudie. I see. That's the thing. A lot of those nudie cuties I haven't watched because I know they're all the same.
Yeah. Well, they are, but I can see them in my mind's eye restored. That they would look really great, and they'd be like really fun to put on in the summer as like background film. Actually,
they work the best that way, I think. Because it's just naked ladies walking around. Like Beasts That Kill Women, it's just women walking by a camera. Most of his films are basically, I think Dave Friedman said this, Barry Mahon wasn't a director. He let film run through a camera. Which is exactly what he did. Like he basically set up a scenario and had people just naked ladies walk in front of the camera a couple times. I would get it if it was a box set of the black and white stuff. If it was the roughies or the roughy adjacent, absolutely. The nudie cuties. Oh, you know what? All the shorts. I love the shorts. Give me a nice collection of all the shorts remastered. Those are perfect for background, I think. Yeah. Because they're just really cute and fun.
They're party films,
The cast is great. They totally are. Yeah, they totally are. Yeah, I love those shorts.
Well, I'd love to see two box sets. You could do the Barry color and the Barry black and white. There you go.
Yeah, I like that idea. And then he also, it's so weird. He also had the Dead one, which is so boring.
Which has its own release. It got its own standalone release.
Which Severin put out, and I was like, yeah, go Severin. Severin really likes surprising me with the releases they put out, but that one I was just like, okay, I guess somebody wants this. I don't know who, but
it's like
Monica Davis fans probably. I love Monica Davis.
Yeah, she's in that. But I mean, as a zombie historical film, it's arguably the first color zombie movie. So
that's true, I guess. I Eat Your Skin is better. I like that much more than the Dead one. But yeah, his black and white ones, he's kind of dismissive about them, but I think they're really kind of the best. Sex Killer is really good. Prostitutes Protective Society. Hot Skin Cold Cash. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what the plans are for the Barry Mahon stuff. He's not a director I'm clamoring to get like a nice complete collection of. He's not like a Sarno where I would want a full collection of all of Sarno's 60 stuff and then a separate one with all the 70 stuff.
All right, we'll message Lisa after this and see what's going on.
She's in Bridgeport, Connecticut, visiting the Vinegar Syndrome headquarters.
There we go.
And I already know they have some really good stuff there that's coming out from Something Weird, which I'm very excited about and I hope to be working on. Hopefully that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes. We'll try to keep you tight-lipped on that so you don't get NDA'd.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I try to be very careful about it, but I don't know. They like to tell a lot of people their secrets, and some of those people aren't as secretive as I am. So I try to keep it secret.
I know a few secrets, but probably not as many as you.
I would love if they got aroused back, because I don't know if AGFA's putting it out or not. AGFA, come on, you got to put this out.
Yes.
I don't know what the holdup is.
Well, and we will end this podcast by reassuring our listeners that, yes, we are aware we have been stuck in New York for the past few episodes, and we will...
So this is our first trip to California.
I mean, yeah, this is in California, but I associate it with, like, New York filmmaking. Is that incorrect?
No, I think you're right. Yeah. I just thought when I was watching it, we're in California.
It's like, yeah, we're in California.
Finally made the trip.
By a sort of mainly New York filmmaker with a lot of New York actors and actresses. But we are aware we will be diverting our attention soon to other locations in the United States and possibly outside the United States. So stay tuned. Thanks again,
and also
Casey.
Color.
Yes.
We'll be doing color at some point, too.
And color at some point.
That'll be a big deal.
Yeah. And thank you, Barry. Always got to end with a thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Gretchen.
That's about all there was to it.